Welcome to Conversations Live. For more than a decade, we've brought you the best in books, entertainment, and current events. When the movers and shakers of the world have something to say to you, they say it to us first. Now, here's your host, Cyrus Webb.
And welcome back, everyone, to Conversations Live. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again, whether you're tuning in on the radio dial here in Mississippi. We welcome you all back to our program. Also, those tuning in through our online affiliates around the world, including our iHeartRadio family. We're glad to have all of you with us as well. We're excited to welcome back author Holli Kenley to our program today. Holli has given us some great books addressing some very timely topics over the years, and this year is no different. Her new book is called Daughters Betrayed by Their Mothers, Moving from Brokenness to Wholeness. We're going to talk to Holli about what it was like for her to be able to talk about this topic, especially about the significance of the cover of the book, which I had a chance to see a great video she did about it, but also what she hopes it's able to do in helping people with the healing process. And I should say, after reading the book, not just for women, but I think for all of us when it comes to how we can be able to move forward and to be whole and what it takes to be able to do that. Now, just now hearing about Holli's new book, we'll tell you at the end of our segment how you can be able to get your own copy of it. But Holli, hello to you and welcome back to the program.
Hi, Cyrus. It's so good to be with you again. I'm excited to talk about this.
Well, look, I'm excited to welcome you back. I should say before we get started, though, congratulations to you. Already you have an Amazon.com bestseller on your hands. And, you know, it's been great to even see online, Holli, you know, the excitement for the book, of course, your own excitement for it as well. But what has it felt like for you to have this labor of love, Holli, receive the way that it's been so far?
Cyrus, it's just been overwhelming. I haven't experienced this. This is my 9th book, and I haven't experienced this kind of interest in any of my other books. So it's just been overwhelming and phenomenal. And it's just exciting. It motivates me all the further just to get it out there.
Right, for sure. And we're definitely glad to be able to help do just that as well. Holli, so let's talk about the topic. As I said, the title of the book is Daughters Betrayed by Their Mothers. And I think that once people read the book, you know, one of the themes that I think you've been very good at addressing and doing so in a way of love is how we can be able to be whole, regardless of whatever circumstances we go through. There's a great chapter in the book, one of my favorites in there, The Power Rests Completely Within Me, that talks about going from brokenness to be able to get to a better place. What has it been like for you to not only to share with people the hope that is available, but also what is possible for them, regardless of what trauma they've gone through in their lives?
Cyrus, this is why I do what I do, is because I know, and you know, and so many of us know that even though it may not seem within our reach, that recovery is possible, working through whatever our injuries or injustices are. It's hard work, and it requires so much of us. But if we're willing to commit to that and to work the process, as we say, there is just such a wholeness and a wellness that awaits us. So this was just I'm very comfortable writing about the topic of betrayal. This is my 4th book on it, and I just thought this time, by sharing the daughters' voices of how they journeyed from brokenness to wholeness, that would really grab the readers and really show them that it is within reach, it is possible.
Right, for sure. And as you mentioned, this is a topic you have addressed before. I remember when you and I first connected, there was the book Breaking Through Betrayal. You even talked about this even in your book Mountain Air that we discussed on this program. Holli, you know, do you find that one of the reasons why this is something that keeps coming up is because, quite frankly, all of us know what it's like at one point or another, in some degree or another, what it feels like to be betrayed?
Oh, Cyrus, I absolutely do. And the common theme with betrayal, whether it's our mothers or who or whatever it might be, is that, well, a couple of things. One, there's a lot of shame around it. There's a lot of embarrassment around it, and we internalize it that it's our fault, it's self-defect, all those kinds of feelings. And so we don't talk about it. And by bringing this out into the open, by talking about, and this is a very tender subject, as you've alluded to, of mothers and betrayal, but with all betrayal, it's so self-deprecating. And so when we open up this conversation and we realize, gosh, there are others who feel my pain, who experience my shame, and there's others who have recovered. Perhaps I can too. So it really is being brave enough and ready enough to talk about the topic. And that's why in particular I chose, there were lots of reasons why I decided to write about mothers and daughters, but one of them is that because mothers carry around those connotations of being revered and respected and regarded, and that we are, they hold a power, they hold a privilege with those connotations. And that's another thing Cyrus says with anybody who is injured in a betrayal type of situation, is that there usually is a power differential, and that's where some of the shame comes in, because we're not likely to speak up against that person, or it could be a thing that holds that power and privilege. We're told to just get better, to get over it, to toughen up, to move on, and not to embarrass or shame the family or the organization or whatever it might be. So, again, there's a lot of complex and complicated factors involved that really keep the person stuck, that really keep the person in a place of injury. So with all my work on betrayal is that I want to break open that conversation, and I want others to feel that there is shared suffering, which means there are others who know exactly what you're feeling. And as I alluded to a moment ago, there is definitely a path to wholeness, to wellness.
Right. I think that is the big thing for sure. And, you have been entrusted with so much, Holly. It kind of reminds me of the privilege that I have of doing this program, and how sometimes, I have gone to some interviews, and I know there are certain topics that are difficult for the guests, and I'll tell them, hey, I'll let you be the one to initiate that if you wish to go in that direction, and then to know that they're comfortable. I mentioned that chapter earlier, The Power of Rest, completely within me, because Robin's story, I think, is so many people's story. And I want to actually talk about this chapter a bit, because one of the things that Robin alluded to that I want to ask you about, Holly, is the fact that she felt comfortable enough to say things to you that she had not been able to do before. How does that feel for you to be given that gift, the gift of confidence?
Oh, Cyrus, this whole project was definitely the most personally and professionally challenging project that I've ever been involved in. It's like being a therapist on steroids. But it was also the most rewarding and the most restorative. It took me 2 years to do this, and with Robin's chapter and the other daughters, is that what I found, because I'm chapter 1, and I, of course, have done a lot of work on myself with healing from my betrayals of my mother. But what I found during these 2 years, Cyrus, of interviewing the daughters, is that with every interview, with being present for every daughter, and then transcribing their narratives and editing them, and I would grieve with them, I would celebrate with them, I would connect with them, and it was absolutely an incredible experience. It's really hard to put into words.
Gotcha. I'm glad you brought up your chapter, Holly, because I was going to ask you about that in parallel to Robin's. We're going to talk about that. I want to say, for those who are just tuning in, either on the radio side or online, you're listening to Conversations Live. You heard her just mention being a therapist on steroids. She actually is a marriage and family therapist as well, but also author Holli Kenley is back with us. She's the author of the new book that's getting a lot of attention. It's already an Amazon.com bestseller, Daughters Betrayed by Their Mothers, Moving from Brokenness to Wholeness. There's an interesting parallel I found, Holly, between your story in the book and Robin's story in the book. And one of the things that you talk about in your chapter is, when it comes to talking about your mother today, acceptance being one of the things that you're able to deal with. That mirrors what Robin talks about as well, realizing that maybe if her mother had had help there, if she had been able to get assistance, things could have been different, and trying to understand that aspect. Was that part of the theme that you found as you were kind of going through this book and having the conversations with the daughters?
Cyrus, that was a profound discovery and reoccurring theme with all of the daughters, except just the one chapter of the daughter who wasn't able to complete the study, and I explain why in that chapter. But the beautiful thing in this book, one of the beautiful things I should say, is that because the daughters did the hard work, and I just want to put this in here because it's the insidious piece about betrayal is that most folks think and believe is that you have to wait for the betrayer to make it right or someone or something else to make it right, and therefore you just remain tethered to that person or that thing that continues to injure you. I mean, and that's just the nature of betrayal. It's only natural to feel like someone or something else should fix it or make it better. But what these daughters realized, because their mothers were unable or unwilling or incapable of showing up for them in the ways that they needed, is that they made the choice to do the hard work. Getting back to your question, is that without exception, each of us got to a place of peace and acceptance. And I love in Robin's chapter how she talks about that her acceptance really came in the form of compassion for her mother, and her mother happens to still be living. And all the daughters do say, Cyrus, and I want to put this out there, that it doesn't excuse what the behaviors were, what they didn't get, but understanding their mothers more explains, help them to understand things and explain things, and then catapulted them into those places of peace and acceptance along with their other work that they did.
For sure. And I think, too, realizing that there are alternatives. I think, when I was reading this book, and I mentioned earlier, Holly, and I genuinely mean this, that men can read this book, too, I think, and get so much out of it, because even transitioning from Robin's story to Dawn's story, one of the things that Dawn realized is how she did not want to handle what she was feeling when it came to her brokenness. She did not want to turn to alcohol. She did not want to turn to drugs. She wanted to find a way, but she knew that was not the way that she needed to go. I love that one line that I made a note of where she says in her chapter, I wanted a different life. I think there's so many of us that know what that's like, to not to have to continue a cycle or to go down a dangerous road, but we simply want to be able to find true wholeness. Do you also think that's part of this as well for you, Holly, and the work that you do and what you've done in this book? It shows where true wholeness can come from and where it cannot come from.
Cyrus, absolutely. And getting to your point, too, about I deliberately intentionally, I should say, asked you and two other males that I highly respect I asked you if you would be willing to endorse the book if you felt it was worthy of it, because I wanted to know if it would resonate with sons. And that definitely has come back not only from you and the other two gentlemen that read the book, but from other folks as well. What I hope, Cyrus, will just jump out for people in this book, and I've already gotten quite a bit of feedback on it, is that there are so many different paths that an individual can take. I mean, the daughters' recovering journeys are so diverse. They're so different, and they embraced a myriad of different strategies, methodologies. I mean, everything from a self-help book to, a 12-step meeting, whatever. But that they did this incredible hard work, and there's so many different, as I said, paths. And so what works for one person might not work for another, and if it doesn't, try something else, but don't give up, and that you can change your life. Something else that also jumped out at me, Cyrus, and is that only two out of the six daughters chose, because, one didn't complete the study, but only two of us chose to become mothers. And I thought that was really, really profound. And it's not that the other daughters weren't willing or couldn't have. They just felt that their lives were full and they were whole the way they were. And the two of us, myself and Alejandra, who chose to become mothers at a very young age, we made a promise to ourselves that we wouldn't repeat it. And so getting back to your overall question at the beginning of this section is that it does take an acknowledgement of what's going on in your life and an awareness, and then making that decision, making that choice for yourself that, yes, I want a different way of being. And I just hope the book will make clear to them that there's so many different approaches and paths to take.
For sure. I think that is so true. And that you do not have to be, and I had this conversation recently with a father and daughter who wrote a book about addiction. The father dealt with addiction, and he co-wrote the book with his daughter, Holly. And, she talked about what his addiction did to the family, did to her, and the decision she knew that she could not go down that road. She would not allow something to control her like this had. And now he's 10 years free of that, and they're working together to be able to share this message. Is that kind of what you hope as well, that conversations start taking place? I love the fact, too, I'm all about affirmations. So I love the fact that, these ladies were able to give these profound, affirmations about being the phoenix rising from the ashes, being, being these powerful forces. I made me who I am, and realizing that, as Robin said earlier, the power rests completely within me. And even for you, Holly, realizing that, even if you have to go alone, that you can be able to be comfortable in yourself to do that. Is that also what you hope it does for these daughters and even for those sons that you mentioned, to be able to show them that they can be able to move forward confidently?
Oh, Cyrus, you just said it so beautifully. That is exactly it. That we do not have to live in blame or shame or feeling less than or broken, whatever the right words are, that each and every day we have a choice. And yes, it's hard work and it requires much of us, but we can take those painful pieces of our past and turn them into our sources of rebirth and renewal. These daughters had some of the most, Cyrus, you've read and endorsed the book. Their stories are hard to read, and
right.
Yet they again turned to whatever path or process that resonated with them, and they did it. They came out the other side. They didn't get bitter. They got better.
Yeah, you mentioned Alexandra earlier. I think there's a lot of people who can relate to her in a sense that, I think especially, if you're looked at as the strong one, I was looked at as that one in my family, as the strong one of the siblings. And because of that, I ended up, attempting suicide 3 times and suffering depression before I was 20 because I felt such pressure to be so much more than I thought I could be.
Yes.
I love the fact with Alexandra's chapter, though, as I was reading it, that and one of the things that stood out to me, and I actually will read it right from the book, is that even as she talked about her mother and kind of even understanding, she said this: I wanted to make my life the way I wanted it. And I think that is the thing that happens so much. We give so much trying to be what someone else wants us to be. We forget that we are to be the best of ourselves, whatever that is. Is that also empowering for you, Holly, to realize that, that she got it? I mean, even as her chapter alludes to, that she realized she could be enough just being who she was.
Yes, absolutely. That was another reoccurring theme when I did the analysis. That just struck out to me so powerfully, is that Alejandra and several of the other daughters, even though that they say like their family system was upside down, they were the parentified child. They were the ones that were, the adult in the house, is that, and they really couldn't be children. And that, however, in that, knowing that they took that strength, they took that resilience of being the adult in the household and use that as the driving force to, get them out of the house, to keep moving them forward, even though there were lots of other injurious things going on in their lives. But actually, as I talk about in their chapters and in the analysis, it was almost like this seed was planted within them that had this resilience there, and then just grew. In part of the analysis, Cyrus, I call it moving from protecting an injured self to producing a new self. And that's what it takes. I mean, I've worked in the areas of abuse and trauma all, in my professional career, and it really takes kind of that dismantling of the injured self. So I don't want to imply that this is easy work and then producing a new self, but there was that core in each of the daughters, that seed in each of them, that little piece of sand, if you will, that turned into that beautiful pearl over years of hard work and choice and just incredible drive and persistence.
Yeah. What you just said is a perfect segue to what I mentioned we were going to talk about. So see how we're working in tandem on this? And that is about the cover of the book. Again, as I mentioned, I watched that great video you did. You even do outline this in the book, but for those who have not read it, one of the things that you say, though, is about, and even talking about the shell, even in the book and what it alludes to. You say this about the pearl. The pearl is a beautiful thing produced by an injured life. And talk to us about what it was like for you to see this cover come to life based on what you share in the book about how you saw these women, saw these daughters, and what they were able to produce even with what they had gone through.
Oh, Cyrus, that the pearl is just about, as you said, the story. I made a little video about it that I'll be putting out again. It's so incredible to me how that whole process of finding the picture of the pearl, to printing it out, to using it as my source of inspiration throughout the writing of the book, discovering that beautiful quote, "A pearl's a beautiful thing produced by an injured life," and then as I'm going through this 2-year process and realizing that is exactly the perfect metaphor for these daughters and for anyone who takes their injury and turns it around and turns it into something beautiful for them and positive for them, and it is so hard to even put into words. And then when my publisher gave it to the graphic artist to put into that beautiful cover, all he had, Cyrus, was the shell with the pearl in it. And then the way that he superimposed that on, if you look carefully on the cover, you can see the profile of a daughter.
Exactly.
It's just and it's just so beautiful. And I've had people just weep when they see the cover. A friend of mine had it at a restaurant, and she said somebody just grabbed it out of her hands and said, "What is that book? I need that book." And it's so beautiful and it's so powerful. I've got to get this book. So I mean, I'm so glad that it has that beautiful cover because the material is hard and it's
Right.
it's tender material, so it makes it
Right.
more inviting.
It does, and I think too, it softens this, and I think that is when people read the book, Holly, I think they'll get that's an important element of this because the work that these daughters were willing to do was hard, but the result is a beautiful thing, and we see that as their stories unfold, as your story unfolds. We're able to see it, and I think that's the great thing about sharing stories like this is that we're able to get an idea that regardless of what challenges we may have faced in our lives, what trauma we may have gone through, that there is something beautiful that can be on the other side of it. And I think that is the big thing for me, the big takeaway for me for sure. What is your hope, Holly, as men and women do discover daughters betrayed by their mothers and read this book and go through it and really reflect on their own experiences? What do you hope the book does for them?
Oh, gosh, Cyrus, I hope, number one, I hope that they realize that they're not alone, especially with any kind of betrayal, as I alluded to earlier, in particular of maternal betrayal, is that we do feel like we're alone. We don't talk about it. We don't speak about it. And so, number one, to know that you are not alone, that there's others who share in your pain and in your shame. Because just from the feedback that I've gotten, Cyrus, that the emails, the different, that has been huge. So, number one, that's you're not alone. Number two, oh my goodness, others recovered, I can too. and so just that hope that it instills. And then I think the last thing, which just goes around, betrayal in general and any injury, injustice, where especially now, Cyrus, with the Me Too movement and all of that, is that we honor our truths, that we speak our truths. And it's very hard to do so against people who hold power, but we are seeing this happen over and over and over again. I'm so excited that this book came out during this time. I think it really, just is amplified by the movement. But when we are true to ourselves, and even if everybody else is shaming us or blaming us or whatever, when we're willing to just speak our truths and honor our truths and then embrace our program of recovery, there is no greater joy, there is no greater blessing to ourselves than honoring those truths.
And I think that is the big thing, Holly. I think that is the big thing for all of us to be able to realize, and that's something that all of us can attain, if we're willing to do the work. And that's where the courage comes in, for sure. If we're willing to do the work, there's really nothing we can't accomplish. Again, everyone, Holli Kenley has been our guest once again. Great conversation with you, Holli, as always. Daughters Betrayed by Their Mothers is the new book. Moving from Brokenness to Wholeness. The book's available now, as I mentioned, already an Amazon.com bestseller. You can get it through our friends at Amazon, either in print or the Kindle edition. And Holli, let our audience know, how can they stay connected with you?
They can stay connected with me either through my Facebook page, which is, I have a couple of them. They're both under Holli Kenley, Twitter, and do a lot of tweeting, and can go to my website. But it kind of seems like the social networking sites are the way to go now. But if you go to my website, you can send a confidential email to me through there. I'd love to hear from you, love to hear your feedback, and help in any way possible.
Well, Holli, congratulations to you again. I know this is only the beginning of the work this book will continue to help people through, and looking forward to our next conversation together.
Cyrus, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hey, the pleasure is definitely all mine. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Conversations Live. Until next time, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying, as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Make sure you take out time to enjoy some good music as well as a great book. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Live today. You all make it a great one.